I, 28F, have a complicated relationship with my sister Emily, 24F, and our father. Our mother died in a car accident when I was 12 and Emily was 8. I still remember that day clearly. We were waiting for Mom to pick us up from school, but instead, our aunt showed up crying. That was the day everything changed in our family. Before Mom died, our house was always filled with laughter and music. Mom was a music teacher who believed in letting us explore our interests freely. She encouraged my love for science and Emily's interest in art. Dad was different back then too. He smiled more and even attended our school plays. After Mom's death, Dad changed completely. He packed away all of Mom's things, including her piano, within a week. When I protested, he slapped me for the first time. He said we needed to focus on practical things now, not wasteful hobbies. He threw away my science projects and Emily's art supplies, saying we needed to concentrate on business and accounting like him. Dad became extremely controlling and manipulative. He started monitoring our clothes, friends, and activities. He would check our phones every night and read our text messages. If he didn't approve of something, he would ground us for weeks. He was obsessed with us becoming successful his way. The difference in how he treated us became apparent pretty quickly. While I got criticized for everything, Emily became his golden child. Looking back, I think it was because Emily looked more like Mom with her blonde hair and blue eyes, while I took after Dad's side of the family. He would praise her achievements endlessly while dismissing mine. In high school, I maintained straight A's despite working part-time at a local diner. Dad never once congratulated me. Instead, he would say things like if you spent less time working that useless job and more time learning about business, you might actually make something of yourself. But when Emily got B+ grades, he would take her out for celebration dinners and buy her expensive gifts. I started secretly saving money from my part-time job, knowing I would need it to escape someday. Dad constantly talked about how I would take over his accounting firm, but I had different dreams. I wanted to become a nurse, inspired by the kind nurses who had helped Mom in her final days. When I told Dad about my nursing ambitions during my senior year, he exploded. He threw things around the living room and said I was betraying the family legacy. He threatened to cut off my college funding and kick me out if I didn't study accounting. That night, I heard him telling Emily, "At least I have one daughter who isn't a disappointment." I moved out at 18 to attend nursing school, using my saved money and scholarships. Dad told everyone at church that I had abandoned the family and broken his heart. Emily, who was 14 then, stopped talking to me for months because Dad convinced her that I had chosen strangers of her family. Over the next few years, Emily followed Dad's path exactly. She studied accounting and started working at his firm right after college. Dad made her a partner within her first year, even though she had no real experience. Several senior employees quit because of this blatant nepotism, but Dad didn't care. He would brag about how Emily was the good daughter who understood family loyalty. Despite everything, I tried maintaining contact with Emily. We would meet for coffee every few weeks, and I noticed how Dad's controlling behavior had affected her. She needed his approval for everything, from what to wear to who to date. She broke up with her college boyfriend because Dad said he wasn't ambitious enough. Last year, Emily started dating Mark, one of Dad's business associates. He's 39 years old, 15 years older than her and exactly like our father. The first time I met him at a family dinner, he ordered Emily's food without asking what she wanted. He also kept interrupting her and making decisions for her. When Emily looked at Dad for approval, he was beaming with pride. I tried talking to Emily about the red flags I noticed in Mark's behavior. How he would check her phone when she wasn't looking, how he would make subtle comments about her weight, how he would criticize her career choices despite her being a partner in Dad's firm. But Emily dismissed all my concerns, saying I was just jealous of her happiness. Things escalated 6 months ago when Emily announced her engagement to Mark. Dad threw them an extravagant party, showing off his successful daughter and future son-in-law to all his business associates. Throughout the party, Mark treated Emily like a trophy, parading her around and speaking for her when anyone asked her questions. The final straw came last week. Emily called me at midnight, crying hysterically. She had found messages on Mark's phone showing he was still married to someone else. She asked if she could stay with me for a few days to clear her head. I immediately agreed and prepared my spare room. But the next day, Dad showed up at my apartment, raging. He accused me of trying to poison Emily's mind against Mark and ruin her chances at a good life, just like I had ruined my own by becoming a nurse. Emily walked in behind him, completely transformed from the crying mess she had been the night before. She said Mark had explained everything. His divorce papers were just delayed due to court backlogs. She called me jealous and toxic for trying to break up her relationship. I finally lost my temper. I told Emily she was making a huge mistake by trusting Mark and that she had become Dad's puppet, unable to think for herself. She slapped me and said I was dead to her. They both left, with Emily declaring she never wanted to see me again. Now Emily is getting married next month, and Dad called yesterday saying I should apologize to both Emily and Mark if I want to attend the wedding. He said I need to accept that Emily made her choice and that Mark is a good man who will take care of her. Ida for refusing to apologize and choosing to skip the wedding? Update 1. After my last post, I couldn't just sit around knowing my sister might be marrying a man who was potentially still married. The thought kept me awake at night, so I decided to do some investigating. I have a friend Sarah who works at the courthouse where Mark claimed his divorce was being processed. I hadn't talked to her in months, but I knew this was important enough to ask for her help. Sarah pulled some records and what she found was disturbing. Mark wasn't just married, he had 3 ex-wives, and his current marriage wasn't even close to being dissolved. The divorce papers he claimed were delayed hadn't even been filed yet. But that wasn't even the worst part. All 3 of his previous wives had filed domestic violence charges against him. Each case followed a similar pattern. The relationship started great, with Mark being incredibly charming and generous. Then after marriage, he would become controlling and aggressive. The charges were eventually dropped in all cases, but Sarah found records showing the wives had been pressured into withdrawing their complaints through financial settlements and threats about their careers. Each marriage followed the same timeline, about 2 years before ending badly. Mark would target successful women from wealthy families, integrate himself into their family businesses, and then systematically isolate them from their friends and family. By the time the marriages ended, he had usually managed to extract significant amounts of money from their family businesses. I spent 3 days gathering all the documentation. I found newspaper articles about one of his previous weddings, court records that were public, and even some social media posts from his current wife warning others about him. I compiled everything into a detailed document and sent it to Emily's email. I also forwarded copies to Dad's office email because I knew he monitored Emily's communications. The response was worse than I expected. Emily showed up at the hospital where I worked during my shift. She started screaming in the middle of the emergency room about how I was trying to ruin her life. She called me a jealous, bitter woman who couldn't stand to see others happy. My colleagues had to escort her out while she shouted that I was making up lies because I was envious of her perfect life. Dad's reaction was even more shocking. Instead of being concerned about Mark's history, he called me that evening in a rage. He said Mark had already explained everything to him. Apparently, all his ex-wives were unstable women who had tried to take advantage of him. Dad was more worried about how this would affect his firm's reputation since he had recently made Mark a partner. He threatened to sue me for defamation if I didn't stop spreading malicious lies about his future son-in-law. The next morning, I received a formal cease and desist letter from Dad's law firm. It demanded that I stop harassing Mark and Emily and threatened legal action if I continued to spread defamatory statements about Mark's character. Emily also went on a social media rampage, posting a long rant about how her mentally unstable sister was trying to ruin her wedding with fake stories because she couldn't handle seeing others succeed. My phone started blowing up with messages. Some family friends called to express their concern and support, saying they had always felt something was off about Mark. But others, especially Dad's business associates and church friends, started sending nasty messages about how I was trying to break up a happy couple out of spite. What really got to me was discovering that Dad had been spreading rumors at his firm about my mental health. He told his employees and clients that I had been unstable since Mom's death and had a history of making up stories for attention. Some of these rumors reached the hospital where I work. Yesterday, my head nurse called me into her office to discuss concerning reports they had received about my mental state. Thankfully, my work record speaks for itself, and my supervisor knows me well enough to not take these rumors seriously. I've started documenting everything now, every call, every message, every social media post. I even recorded some of Dad's threatening voicemails. I also managed to find and reach out to Mark's previous wives through social media. 2 of them responded and were willing to talk to Emily. They shared similar stories about how Mark had charmed their families and isolated them from anyone who questioned his behavior. One of his ex-wives warned me that Mark might try to retaliate since I was digging into his past. She said he had hired private investigators to dig up dirt on her when she tried to warn his next wife. I've started being more careful about my surroundings and changed all my passwords just in case. Emily still won't listen to anything I say. She texted me last night saying she was blocking my number because she couldn't handle my toxic jealousy anymore. She said Mark was the best thing that ever happened to her and that I was just trying to ruin her happiness like I ruined Dad's dreams of a family business. I don't know what to do anymore. I have all this evidence but no one who will listen. Every attempt to protect my sister just pushes her further away and deeper into Mark's influence. But I can't just stand by and watch her marry someone like him. I know what he is, and I know what he'll do to her. The thought of Emily going through what his other wives experienced keeps me up at night. Update 2: I never expected things to unfold the way they did at Emily's wedding. I didn't attend, but my cousin Sarah agreed to go and keep me updated. She called me immediately after everything went down, and the details she shared were shocking. The wedding was held at Dad's church, the same one where we had Mom's funeral. Emily had invited almost 300 people, mostly Dad's business associates and church members. Sarah said Emily looked nervous during the whole ceremony, nothing like an excited bride. She kept looking at Dad for reassurance, while Mark seemed more interested in networking with the business people in attendance. The moment that changed everything came when the priest asked if anyone objected to the marriage. Sarah said the church doors burst open, and a woman walked in. It turned out to be Rebecca, Mark's current wife. She had somehow found out about the wedding and came with proof that their divorce wasn't just delayed, Mark had never even filed the papers. Mark completely lost control when he saw Rebecca. He started shouting in the middle of the church, calling her crazy and unstable, the same words he had used to describe all his previous wives. When Rebecca tried to show Emily the proof she had brought, Mark actually lunged at her. He had to be physically restrained by several guests when he tried to grab the documents from Rebecca's hands. The scene got even worse when Rebecca's lawyer, who had come with her, started reading out details of Mark's ongoing marriage and his history of fraud. Several of Dad's business associates were present, and they heard every word about how Mark had embezzled money from his previous wife's family businesses. Emily had a complete breakdown at the altar. Sarah said she just stood there, shaking and crying, while Mark was being escorted out by security. Dad tried to salvage the situation by telling everyone it was all a misunderstanding, but the damage was done. Most guests left quickly, obviously embarrassed and shocked by what they had witnessed. Instead of coming to me, Emily went straight to Dad's house. Sarah told me Dad somehow managed to convince her that this was all my fault. He claimed I must have tracked down Rebecca and planned this humiliation to ruin Emily's reputation. Emily, as usual, believed every word. Yesterday, I received a 5-page email from Emily. She wrote that I had finally succeeded in destroying her life completely. She accused me of hiring Rebecca to crash the wedding and claimed that I had orchestrated the whole scene because I couldn't stand to see her happy. She wrote that she would never forgive me for humiliating her in front of everyone who mattered. Dad has been busy doing damage control at his firm. He's telling everyone that I plotted with Mark's wife to ruin my sister's wedding out of jealousy. Several of our relatives have taken his side, saying I went too far this time. When I tried explaining that I had nothing to do with Rebecca showing up, my Aunt Linda told me that no one would ever believe me after what I did to poor Emily. The truth is, I had never even contacted Rebecca. I had reached out to Mark's previous wives, but Rebecca wasn't one of them. She had found out about the wedding through her own sources. I later learned that she had been trying to serve Mark divorce papers for months, but he kept avoiding them. The most frustrating part is that even after everything that happened, Emily still can't see the truth. She's more angry about the wedding being ruined than about Mark's lies. When Sarah tried telling her about Mark's reaction at the church, Emily defended him, saying he only acted that way because he was provoked. Dad is now facing questions from his business partners about Mark's involvement in the firm. Apparently, some clients are concerned about having worked with someone who has a history of financial fraud. But instead of accepting that he made a mistake in trusting Mark, Dad is blaming me for causing problems in his business. I'm actually relieved the wedding didn't happen, even though this wasn't my doing. At least Emily didn't end up legally tied to Mark. But it breaks my heart that she still can't see how Dad's manipulation has affected her judgment. She's so used to believing his version of reality that she can't even recognize the truth when it literally walks through the church doors. Update 3: The past 6 months have been a roller coaster of events. After the wedding disaster, things started unraveling at Dad's firm. Their accountant discovered that Mark had been quietly siphoning money from client accounts. When they dug deeper, they found he had transferred nearly $300,000 to offshore accounts during his time at the firm. Emily and Dad tried to sue Mark, but during the legal proceedings, even more dirt came out. They discovered Mark had done this to all his previous wives' family businesses. He had a pattern of integrating himself into family firms, gaining access to accounts, and slowly stealing money while keeping everyone distracted with his charm and business promises. Several of Dad's major clients pulled their accounts when they found out about the fraud. Some even threatened legal action against the firm for negligence. Dad's reputation in the business community took a massive hit. 3 senior partners left, taking their clients with them. The interesting part is how Emily handled all this. Instead of accepting that I had been right about Mark, she created a completely different narrative. She started telling everyone that if I hadn't interfered and ruined her wedding, She would have helped Mark become a better person. She claimed that my constant suspicion and negativity had pushed Mark into bad behavior. Dad, unsurprisingly, supported this twisted logic. He told his remaining clients that my interference had destabilized his firm's partnership with Mark, causing all these problems. Some people actually believed this ridiculous story, including our extended family members who still blame me for everything. Last month, Emily sent me a message that really showed me nothing would ever change. She wrote that she was dating someone new, another one of Dad's business associates who's almost 20 years older than her. She said she was warning me to stay away and not interfere this time, threatening legal action if I tried to ruin another relationship. That message was my breaking point. I finally accepted that no matter what happened, Emily would always choose Dad's version of reality over the truth. I realized I couldn't save someone who didn't want to be saved. I decided to make some major changes in my life. I accepted a position at a hospital in a different city, 3 states away. I moved without telling any family members my new address. I blocked Emily, Dad, and anyone who might tell them where I am. Some relatives think I'm being cruel, but I'm done sacrificing my peace for people who only bring chaos to my life. Looking back, I can see how Dad's manipulation affected both Emily and me differently. It made me fight for independence, while it made Emily completely dependent on his approval. She's still stuck in the cycle of seeking Dad's validation through the men he chooses for her. Mark is now facing multiple fraud charges from his various schemes, but Emily still believes he would have changed if I hadn't interfered. Dad is struggling to rebuild his firm's reputation, but he's more focused on blaming me than acknowledging his own poor judgment. I'm finally at peace with my decision to go no contact. I've made new friends at my new workplace, joined a hiking group, and started taking evening classes to advance my nursing career. Sometimes walking away is the only way to protect yourself, even if it means leaving behind the people you once loved. I've learned that you can't help people who don't want to help themselves, and you can't make someone see the truth when they're committed to believing lies. All you can do is protect your own peace and move forward.